Hey everyone, this is Amit, and welcome to this podcast called Random Cricket Photos That Make My Guests Happy. A podcast where we are going to hear a number of special guests talk about some really special photographs from cricket, photographs that are memorable to them, that are their favorites, and that make them happy. But before we begin our episode, let me talk about one photo from my side.
The pitch today looks very good. It's a nice dry wicket.
Magnificent shot, Greg Chappell. Beautiful placement.
Jeez, what about that? Listen to the crowd now. They're into him.
He's not happy. He's not at all happy.
You would not believe that that was possible.
Should be caught, could be caught. It's Harvey.
This picture is from the Lord's Test of 1996. Now, that particular test is very important to Indian cricket for obvious reasons, which is Sourav Ganguly and Rahul Dravid making their test debuts. But to English cricket and even to world cricket in general, it was also the test which marked the last appearance of umpire Dickie. Now, this picture, it has three people in it. There is Sachin Tendulkar, there is debutant Sourav Ganguly, and in the center is Dickie, who is flicking a tear of his eyes as he proceeds to take the bails off one final time at the end of the Lord's Test match. Patting the umpire on the back in a way to console him is the debutant Ganguly, while Sachin is also there on the other side. For me, this photo captures a lot of things. It captures the maturity of two men who are still not even 25, one of them, in fact, making his debut. And that maturity that's reflected in this little gesture of this young Bengali, when seen in hindsight, tells you why this man would turn into one of India's best cricket captains. But this picture is not about Ganguly or Tendulkar's maturity on display. More than any of it, it captures the love of Dickie for the game. A record number of 66 tests across more than 2 decades. Umpire Dickie for most will remain the ultimate cricket tragic. A man who famously said that he didn't marry all his life because he loved the game so much. And once you know about the love he had for the game, it doesn't really surprise that he's teary-eyed at the end of an illustrious career. But well, in a way, it is poetic that the end of a cricket tragic's career also coincided with the beginning of the long careers of two champions of the game. So these are some of the reasons that make this rather innocuous photograph very special to me. The Random Cricket Photos Carva continues, and we are back with yet another big cricket lover on the show today. Joining me on the podcast to recount his favorite photographs is a gentleman many of you would know as Tinku Jia or Mr. Goldfish from Afsos, or if you've been reading cricket long enough, you would know him as none other than Jamie Alder. Welcome, Jamie. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Amit, for having me. It's a pleasure. Looking forward to a good discussion today.
First of all, congratulations on Afsos. It was great to see you in it, and you totally pulled it off with perfection. But before Afsos, before Tinku Jia, you have been covering sports and a lot of cricket for a good decade and a half, right? So, is it fair to say that both acting as well as love for the game, it sort of runs in your blood? Because we all know what a great lover of cricket Mr. Tom Alter was, apart from, one towering acting figure. Did growing up around a man who loved the game so much have an impact on your perception of it?
Absolutely. There's no denying that. Growing up in the same house as him, I was exposed to films and sports, among various other things. But I think the two things that really stuck with me, obviously, now that we're sitting here discussing, are cricket, for one, sports in general, but in particular cricket. And then, of course, films, the arts, stage, theater, TV, whichever medium you choose to look at. And I think it was a very natural progression. It is something I've spoken about before also. I think I sort of reached a stage where I had to take a call, what do you want to do in life, as we all do at some point. And I sort of went with the writing and the sports part because I love to write and I love sports and I love cricket in particular. The acting thing for me, which is something I did not have the necessary drive or determination to see through all the way as a career. So yeah, to answer your question, yes, both films and cricket are something that I have been exposed to, and they do in fact run in my blood.
And so now that you have, sort of transitioned towards acting, how much of a cricket lover you still are?
Yeah, look, I will always be a lover of this great game. As you just mentioned, I've been a cricket writer, a cricket journalist for 15 years now. So that's what I do. That's what I love, and that's not going to go away. Speaking of a transition, you do sort of, I'll say, you reach a plateau where you're sort of not enjoying things on a daily basis as you were earlier. So just looking for something different, I said, let's just try out something different. As you can imagine, acting has never been very far from me. But I'm very fortunate to have got the chance to do a web series like Afsos. Of course, the Tinku Jia on Fake It India has been going on now for 4 or 5 seasons. So now I'm at a phase where I'm just trying to mix them all together and see where this journey goes. But I'm never going to be very far away from cricket. That's a fact.
That's lovely. And that is exactly why we have you here, because now we are going to ask you to do what we ask our guests to do, which is to recount your favorite 5 photographs from the game, 5 photographs that make Jamie Alter happy. So let's begin with that exercise. And let me ask you, which photograph would you like to talk about first?
I think let's go with the one of Sachin during that 98 at Centurion in 2003.
Against Pakistan.
Yes. Look, obviously, I don't need to get into the history of the importance of that match. 2003 World Cup, India-Pakistan, the biggest game apart from the final, which fans on both sides of the border could have expected. A lot of the significance of this innings was actually revealed much later when Sachin, in an interview, spoke about how he had sleepless nights and how this match had kept him up for a long time. Then when you hear him talk about that, and then you go back to that innings, after Saeed Anwar's 100, India were chasing a very big target. This was Pakistan here, and just the way that he battled cramps, he battled the pressure. Look, there was Wasim, there was Waqar. Granted, both of them were on their last legs as international cricketers, but two fantastic fast bowlers. You had Shoaib Akhtar bowling those thunderbolts. You had Abdul Razak. You had a very good Pakistan bowling attack. And just, the loss of Sehwag and then Ganguly, you put all that together, the way that man Sachin, he shut everything out in like one of those, it's one of those cliches from those Hollywood sports movies when the baseball pitcher has to bowl, he has to pitch the ball and then in a freeze frame, he manages to close his eyes and he shuts out all that noise, So that's something which I really think Sachin did on that day all those years ago. And that picture, I've chosen. This is when obviously he was battling cramps. He had to ensure that he got India over the finish line. All the taunts, all the sledging. I'm sure there was some abuse too on the field, as happens in the heat of battle. And just the way that he sat down. This was when he was battling cramps. That picture of him, I don't know who took the picture. I believe it's a picture from one of the AFP photographers, but it's a shot of him on his haunches from behind. And you can imagine, what that man is thinking as he's down there in that cauldron of a World Cup match. So for me, there are a lot of great images from that innings, from that match. But that's the one for me stands out. Also, from a personal perspective, I was in my final year in college in the US, in a small town. So I know, and a few of my friends know, what all we had to do to get funds together and get a dish put up just so we could broadcast that 2003 ICC Cricket World Cup. And then that match itself, we probably had about 50, 60 people all crammed into the basement of the house I was staying, all kinds of people. So just a very special time, a very special day. So there'll always be that extra bit of personal significance attached to that match for me. So yeah, that is one of my favorite pictures of Sachin Tendulkar.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. I mean, when it comes to Sachin, there are so many significantly special knocks. There are iconic pictures, and you chose this one. So I was wondering what was the thought process behind it. But yeah, wonderful photo. And, when you look at it, you can almost see the pressure of a billion hopes on his shoulders, and he's still fighting it all.
Mm-hmm.
So that's beautiful. But yeah, one question that I always think about, whether this innings would have retained its aura had Sachin gotten to his century that day. What do you think about it?
Look, I mean, stripped down to a basic level, what's the difference between 100 runs and 98 runs, right? It is this whole pursuit of milestones is something which is is obsessed us in cricket, especially more than perhaps any other game. But look, the man, he set India's win up. There was 50s to Dravid and Yuvraj who played exceptionally, but that innings there and just the way that he got out, that short ball, that diving catch at point or gully, the way that a couple of the Pakistan players gave him a send off, all that put together. I mean, is his 98 any less than 100? In my mind, not at all. That was perhaps his greatest one day knock. I would put that up there more than that Desert Storm 100 for me.
Definitely a special one. Okay, moving on to photo number 2. What would be the next on that list?
Let's go with Steve Waugh. This was an Ashes test. It was towards the end of his career. A lot of questions about how long Steve Waugh could go on. Of course, an Ashes test match, no matter what the scoreline, whether it's a dead rubber or the opening match of a series, it always had a certain amount of expectation around it. I mean, for the longest time, this was the premier rivalry when it came to Test cricket. I think a couple other rivalries have since surpassed this. But for me, as a fan of Test cricket, I've always made time for the Ashes as far back as I can remember, and I've always had a bit of a soft spot for Steve Waugh, the batsman. Just the way he put a price on his wicket. The amount of times he just took body blows and all these lovely things about the really dour, the really gritty, the really special Test players. So like I said, this match was towards the end of his career. A lot of the critics had their knives out wondering what Steve Waugh could do. And then, against that backdrop, he got to 100. You can see in that picture, he's dived back into his crease. That little red rag is there. He's got his bat up and he's just lying there saying, you know what? I did it and I did it my way. So a very special picture for me.
Yeah, the problem, as an Indian cricket fan with Steve Waugh was that there was no way you could dislike that man. I mean, he gave India a lot of hard time, let's accept that. But, there was something so tough about him that you could just not help but respect him. And this photo, I think, captures that wonderfully. It's like, someone just managing to catch a bus at the last moment and reminding that I'm still there. Hang on. So, yeah, this
Exactly,
is a very Steve Waugh
exactly. Very well
photograph in
said.
every way. And you talk about Waugh's ability to endure body blows. This innings, mind you, is very memorable because he wasn't 100% fit at the beginning of the match. In fact, he had suffered an injury in the third test, if I remember correctly, and it looked pretty bad. And yet in the final test at the Oval, he decided to play in, it was a dead rubber, he could have chosen not to play. And not only did he play, he scored 150 odd runs. That too, after a point of time, he refused tough singles and solely focused on the boundaries. So yeah, this is an incredible knock and a cute little picture at the end of it. Moving on to photo number 3. What would that be?
We can go with another great batsman and a personal favorite of mine, Rahul Dravid. This is a test match which I guess people across generations who follow Indian cricket will never forget. There are a couple lovely photos again taken by the fantastic cameramen at AFP and Getty and Reuters and various other agencies of the moment that Dravid hits that square cut for the boundary that wins India a test match at Adelaide in 2003. This picture that I've chosen is the one where though I love the picture of that square cut, it's the one of him with his cap off, arms aloft, looking towards the dressing room saying, guys, we've done this. This was an epic test match because, as you know, 2003 India did not win too many test matches overseas, and especially in Australia, and then to win that match at Adelaide to square the series. Still really a fantastic innings. We know that Dravid, he got that double century in the first innings where India were replying to a massive score by Australia. Then those 6 wickets to Ajit Agarkar gave India, a whiff, a sniff of actually winning that match. And then another half century to Dravid when not a lot of his teammates stood up. Really, for me, was perhaps Dravid's greatest achievement as a test cricketer, along with that 180 he made with the VVS Lakshman a couple of years before that at Eden Gardens. So look, you look at the picture, I don't need to say too much. It just captures the moment, not just for Dravid, but what it meant for the Indian team, what it meant for a generation of Indian cricket fans. And being a big fan of Dravid, this picture always will be special for me.
Interesting, because unlike the Steve Waugh photograph, it's a rather uncharacteristic photo of Dravid because we don't see him celebrating that with that guts so much. Truly well deserved celebration from a man who scored almost 300 runs. to give India this special win. And as you said correctly, it is a very special memory for people of my generation. I mean, in this series, the series itself was very special. Dada stepped up in Brisbane, Lakshman Dravid,
Yep.
doing their thing in Adelaide, Kumble getting a bag full of wickets, and then Sachin's double century finally, after that
Yep.
horror run. So it was a very special series that way. And this is the very classic photograph, but a very different Dravid photograph. And I guess that's what makes it really, really beautiful as well. All right. Photo number 4, which is the second last photo. What would that be?
Jacques Kallis. Look, this picture, and I know there are a couple different angles, but Jacques Kallis, after Gary Sober's arguably the best all-rounder, a man who's in every department, be it batting at one down, be it bowling first change, be it catching in the slips with those bucket hands, has just really become the superstar of South African cricket. And not, a player who plays fast bowling fantastically well. And then for an Indian fast bowler, to have him hopping and swaying like that, on a lively surface, was one of the most memorable things I can remember between India and South Africa Test cricket contest. There've been many. Azhar hitting those 4s off of Lance Klusener, Zaheer Khan to Graham Smith. He was his bunny in many ways. But this picture of Kallis, the mighty Kallis, being made to hop and sway and then get out fending, was something which was very special for me.
Truly. And because if you try to put Indian bowler bouncers in Google Images, you will not find anything, and that tells something about Indian pacers. And no disrespect to any of them,
Absolutely.
but for the longest time our memories were of spinners befuddling batsmen. Then we saw some beautiful swing from Srinath, some pace, and then some Yorkers from Zaheer. But bouncing batsmen out, and that too with the ball that makes someone like Kallis react that way, it really gladdens my heart whenever I look at it. So a special memory, and a special character that was S. Sreesanth.
Yep, absolutely. And it's also a very good picture. I mean, full credit to the person who took the picture, because having covered a lot of cricket, I know how many hours these photographers sit there in one place, in that heat, and just the thousands of pictures they will take during a day's play. And to capture that moment must have been a very special feeling for whoever took that picture. So hats off to them as well.
Moving on, which is the last photo on that list? A very special one, I believe, because it is number 1 on that list.
Yes, this picture is not from any international cricket match. Far from that. It is a picture, I think it's the only picture my father and I have on a cricket field, if I'm not mistaken, because I cannot think of any other one. This would have been around, I would say 2011, if I'm not mistaken, at the school ground in the boarding school in Mussoorie in the mountains where my father and I both studied, called Woodstock School. There was a benefit match for a very dear friend of my father's, who was a very big icon in Mussoorie for his efforts to put sports on the map, not just in Uttarakhand but also in India. This was a match. It was a six-a-side tournament. We had teams from all over Uttarakhand, places. I think one team came from Haryana, also one team came from UP. And this was basically just a small post-match presentation in which somebody just happened to get a picture of my father and I. And for me, it's very special because, like we've discussed, his love for cricket was passed on to me, and now here I am talking about my favorite picture. So just a very special moment. And I think, like I said, it's the only time the two of us, there's a picture of us on the cricket field. So a very special moment for me.
That's as adorable as it gets. I mean, what do I even say? The photograph is beautiful enough, and anything that I might say might just take the sheen of a warm and beautiful photograph. So, but yeah, what a special photograph that is. And so, do you remember how much you scored in that match or anything like that? Like, is it you getting a man of the match award or something?
No. I did not even bat in that match. I remember I opened the bowling and the first 2 balls went for 6. I did get someone's wicket, but it was more of like an exhibition match. We were all bowling lollipops, and the ground was very small. So I don't think I did anything, but I think it was just more of like I was just there, and someone said, "Are, I'll come get a picture with your father." And I don't think I did anything special at all in that match. No.
So in time, that photo has become memorable now.
Yes.
So before we let you go, there is, one more thing that we generally do, which is we ask our guests to talk about a moment in cricket whose photograph doesn't exactly exist and one that they would have liked to see. But for this
Yep.
episode, for my personal respect and affection for your father, I would ask you something else, which is, you have to tell us about your father's favorite cricketing memory, the one that he probably talked to you about a lot, but you never witnessed it yourself. Which one would that be?
Oh gosh, that's a tricky one because he talked a lot about cricket, and he probably watched cricket for 55 years.
That's a lot of time.
He started playing it when he was very young. Of course, it was not on TV for the longest time while he was growing up. But this is a man who would have heard it on radio. He would have seen. I know he kept a lot of scrapbooks, so he's seen a lot of cricket. He talked about a lot of matches. I think one story which he really liked to tell was when two, in fact. One was when Tony Greig picked up Chandrasekhar in his arms. This would have been this was that 71 or 73 tour. I'm forgetting the exact dates. But my father was there at the ground, and he said, he and a very dear friend of his had taken a bus down from Mussoorie at the time to watch this match, and he remembers the fact, just the impact that that Tony Greig cradling Vishwanath in his arms. Was it Vishwanath or was it Chandrasekhar? I'm also
Vishwanath. I think it was Vishwanath.
This was that match, but he remembers the entire stadium just erupting as one, because this was not something that visiting captains did. And my father always said that Tony Greig was the captain, the overseas captain, who really came here and said, getting out of our hotels and experiencing and embracing India is something that we should do. And he always said that Tony Greig really changed the perception of overseas captains and overseas tours coming to India. That was one. And another one he always spoke about was when Viv Richards hit that six at the Kotla, which went out of the ground. And I think it went into the Ambedkar Stadium, the one next door.
Exactly.
He was at that match as well. So these are two ones which, again, look, I said he spoke about so many things, but the two ones which he spoke of with a little bit of extra enthusiasm were these two for me.
What beautiful stories. And yeah, Tony Greig actually, often took that effort to entertain the crowds. He was that sort of a personality, even with his batting, bowling, or even after his career in cricket was over, with his commentary. So that's a very special moment and a very special photograph. And no wonder it is really etched in, it was really etched in your father's mind as well. So that was it. Thank you so much, Jamie. It was so beautiful talking cricket to you. I hope that, I hope to see you in more web series, more on screen now. But I hope you also keep your love for the game alive.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you, Amit, for having me here. It's been a pleasure. I think you've got a very good concept here. I hope your viewership and your followership grows and you keep on getting interesting photos and subjects to discuss. And like I said, this phase of life is very interesting. I'm loving every moment of it, and I will never be far from cricket. So
that's beautiful.
Be assured
that's
of that.
Beautiful to know. Great talking to you.
Bye.
So that, ladies and gentlemen, was Jamie Alter with us, who, as we heard, has acting and love for cricket running in his blood. Thanks to Jamie, we also got to hear about some of the photos that his father, Mr. Tom Alter, might have talked about on the show had he been here today. We'll soon come back with yet another episode, but before I take your leave, I'd ask all those listening to this podcast to check out Random Cricket Photos on Facebook, Instagram, as well as on Twitter. New interesting content related to the game is put up almost every day, and if you love the game, there is no reason you would not enjoy that. On that note, I'll take your leave. We'll meet again in the next episode with another very special guest. Till then, stay happy, love cricket.